Okay, so we're gonna start with toning our canvas. And if you haven't been with us before, let me show you what colors we're using. For this painting, we're primarily just gonna use 3 colors and white, but we will add in some cadmium yellow for the grass. So we've got ultramarine blue. I used ultramarine blue green shade from Winsor Newton, or you can use ultramarine blue by Utrecht, is very, very, very similar. Burnt sienna, this is by Winsor Newton. Yellow ochre pale, or you can use yellow ochre, that's fine. Cadmium yellow and titanium white, and I use cadmium yellow medium, and this is by Gamblin. All the rest are Winsor and Newton. And we may use a touch of cadmium red on the muzzle, probably not. We'll just use burnt sienna as our red. But I did suggest getting, if you're planning on moving on to doing more portraits, if you want to do things like raspberries, cherries, anything, you want to add any reds, I would suggest getting cadmium red. I use cadmium red medium. This is by Gamblin. And then I use Winsor & Newton's alizarin crimson. And alizarin crimson is the color that I used mostly for the peonies, using some sap green to counter that. But anyway, you're gonna want those colors if you wanna get into anything where you'll need some more reds. So we're gonna start off though with our toning our canvas. I'm using a 9x12. This is just a canvas panel. And so, like we've always done, I'm just making a little puddle out of Gamsol. These are it's my terps, my solvent. And I'm gonna pull just some burnt sienna in there. So this is gonna be real watery. The Gamsol just thins it down, and I'm gonna add some ultramarine blue. So burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, that combination just makes this great neutral brown. You want it to be watery, but you don't want it to be so thin that it runs down your canvas. So if it's going on too thick, like it's not moving around easily like mine is, then it's too thick. If it's dripping, then it's too thin. So if it's too thick, you add a little more Gamsol. If it's too thin, you add a little more paint. Mine is pretty thin, which is why the color looks so pale. Your color might look a little bit darker. That's okay. Kind of depends on what my toned canvases always turn out a little different. Every time it's a little different. You can also use, so this is what I use to tone, I need a little more, didn't make enough. This is what I use to tone all of my canvases. It's a good base for me. These are colors that I always use, always have on hand. But there are people who also use like alizarin crimson mixed with Viridian, or mixed with, some people do burnt sienna mixed with Viridian, or alizarin mixed with like sap green. That would be an option. So the idea is taking 2 opposing colors on the color wheel. So red and green are opposite of each other, blue and orange are opposite of each other, and purple and yellow are opposite. So and most people don't have purple right out of the tube on their palette. So the most popular option is blue and orange, which is ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, or a red and green combination. So you mix those 2 together and you end up with a nice neutral, and they're all different kinds of neutral. They're, this is very warm. I've mixed it more warm. I could mix it bluer and cooler. It could be much thicker, so it's like almost a black. So there's all sorts of options that you can do for toning. Some people also tone their canvases in a really bright color. There are some people who use like a bright yellow to tone their canvas, and then let the yellow show in some places. I've seen people do it with fuchsia. I mean, there's as with art, there's just no wrong way to do it. So what I'm doing right now is I'm patting it with a paper towel. And this is kind of the magic of oils, that it's wet. I can manipulate this right now. Some people do their underpaintings in acrylics. I don't work with acrylics at all anymore. I used to as a mural artist, but I just have fallen in love with oils. So let me talk through a couple of things if you're working on. I think there are different things that you can work on when you're painting, and you can work on drawing. That's, work on your drafting skills. And more often than not, when I am drawing something like this, then I'm going to start drawing it on my own, and I'll start drawing sort of the bigger shapes. I'll sort of find the lines, like what's the angle of the neck, what's the angle of the back, how long is the back, and I could use my brush handle to double check that, like from the back of the rump to the neck is about that long, so I can double check that against mine and see, oh, mine's a little too long. We're gonna have maybe more of a horse if I do that. And that's how I'll draw most of the time, is I'll sort of do these sort of the rough shapes, very rough shapes, and then I'll kind of double check my measurements. I'm going to look at the negative space, so instead of drawing legs, I'm drawing this shape here. Because for some reason your eye can just, when it's just a shape, your eye can more accurately see it than if I'm drawing a leg. What my brain does is it tries to help me out and says, hey, I know what a leg looks like. Let's draw a leg. And that's how you end up with trees that look like lollipops and eyeballs that are like, eyes that are this, because we're drawing what our brain recognizes as an eye shape. And so when we're drawing just abstract shapes, our brain doesn't do that. Our brain just looks at, this is the shape. And so we can be a bit more accurate. And so all of these things I can measure and say, okay, between this leg and this leg, it's that distance. Let me double check. So mine's right on between this leg and this leg. And again, it's pretty close. Now, obviously the shape of the legs are off, but we're not trying to draw shapes. We're just trying to get the overall body mass down. So let's see, like, how long is the neck? So my head needs to start about here probably. So this is, I would highly, highly recommend, like, if you want to work on your drawing, to do this, so that you can, this is what's going to help you be better. And it's amazing how much my drawing has improved from where I started to where it is now. So this is usually what I would do. And then I would keep going. I would start filling in like the values. So I would start filling in the shadows here. And it does come together pretty quickly, but I do have to keep going back and checking my accuracy, and it's a process. It's a little time consuming, but I just wanted to show you sort of what I do. The other thing too is I keep wanting to do this. If you find that you're doing this, then you need to back way off of the brush. Believe it or not, you draw better now, if you're doing super detail work, you've obviously got to get a little closer, but for getting an overall shape, it's great to hold your brush way back. Also, it helps to step back from the canvas, because if you're too close and too fixated on things, you kind of lose sight of the big picture and the overall proportions of the whole drawing. So it really does help to step back and sort of see. The other thing that you can use, so in addition to drawing sort of the negative space or the abstract shapes, the other thing that you can do is you can look at where are things in relation to one another. So, this eye is in line with this knee. So we want to make sure that that's where we're putting the eye, that it's on that same plane. And we can kind of look at other cues here, like this knee and the tail are in line with one another. We can also make some imaginary lines that run this way. It's sort of the idea of visually making a grid. You see people making those grid drawings. It's sort of the idea of visually doing that. Where do things line up with each other? That can help you adjust your drawing. But what we're going to do for the sake of speed, so I'm not fiddling with the drawing over and over, is we're going to do that trick that I showed last week. So because I paint sight size, I print up, well, even what I'm painting in real life, I try to paint it the actual size that I'm seeing it. So it's known as sight size. So I'm trying to paint this cow exactly the same size as I'm seeing it on the printed image. And that way I can double check with measurements. I'm not trying to blow up the scale or shrink it. So what we can do is we can use this image with the wet underpainting. We can use this image, and then just with the back of our brush handle, we can trace it. A lot of people, I put kind of a high-speed video of doing what did we do last week? The glass and the flowers. And a lot of people were just fascinated by this. Like, how did you trace that? How did you get that? And this isn't about tracing every tiny little detail. This is just about getting the overall shape so we know that our shape is accurate. Oh, the other nice thing about this is that the hooves are in the grass. I kind of hate painting hooves. This is also a good way, if you draw it all out, you do a full value underpainting and you draw it like we did with the pear, and you just feel like something's not right. So there we go, we've got a little, you feel like something is really not right, then you can always do this over the underpainting just to double check everything. And that double checking can really help with, you know, just making sure. I'll do that with portraits sometimes. I'll just spend hours and hours and hours on a portrait and I'm like, something is off, something's wrong, and I don't know what it is. I've measured, I've tried to fix everything, but there's something in the likeness that's just not working. And so I'll do this over the underpainting, and then I can clearly see, well, it was just like the subtle angle of the mouth was just off. It's just something small, but then I can see it. So this is a learning tool. It's a way to help you improve your drawing, and it's a way to double check things. And it's also a way to take the intimidation factor out of something like cows or portraits. So, but I would always recommend that you work on your drawing, because you don't want to, you know, you're limited as to what you can do if you're always having to trace an image. You know, when you want to get out and paint some real stuff in the world, you want to be able to look at things and draw them. But it's a learned skill. It takes a while. So if you have some little tools that you can use while you're improving that skill, then go ahead and use them. Okay, so we've got our outline. This is just a really super basic outline. And, oh, Diane, you couldn't print the picture? You should be able to even just do a screenshot of the picture and then you can print it. That'll help you out a lot. Okay, so what we're going to do from here is we're going to start working on highlight and shadow. So we're going to put in what are the sort of where the shadows are. And this is just with the same mixture. For some reason I feel nervous about this, guys. I haven't painted a cow in a while. So like we did with the pear, when we did that underpainting, we want to always ask, is this lighter? Is this darker? And then try to, as much as we can, you know, replicate that look. So this is all in shadow, so it's fairly dark. An interesting thing too with like the spots, sometimes And it's not as much with this cow because it's got pretty dark spots and pretty light hide. But what you'll sometimes see is that the dark spots are lighter in the sunlight. Wait, no, what am I trying to say here? I guess the shadow of the white ends up being darker than the light part of the spots. That's what I'm trying to say. So you have to really just keep paying attention and checking yourself on, is this lighter or darker? Values are what really make a painting shine. Artists who are just like masters, they've got the values down. And values is something I'm still working on. I tend to always like hang out in the mid-range of values. So keep a paper towel handy, and if an area gets a little dark, just wipe it away. And we're gonna do a pretty basic underpainting and then move on to color, because I don't want this. I could spend like probably 3 hours on this painting, and we don't all need to be here for 3 hours. It's a Friday. So we're just gonna do kind of a basic underpainting drawing here. I find cows' legs to be tricky too. I'm gonna switch to, I just realized I'm using a brush that you guys don't have. I'm gonna switch right now to this bushy brush that we've used. It's good for this. Just to keep all the lines nice and soft. The brush I was using is called a cat tongue brush, and I actually really love that brush for working on animals and portraits. It's a short filbert, and it's just a great shape for some reason for working on animals. If ever you're working on something and you're finding like you're not getting the look you want, you're frustrated with it, try switching your brushes. That's what I did with the peonies. I was just having such a hard time with them. And then I just switched my brush to a different one, and then I started getting shapes that I wouldn't say I loved them, but I was at peace with them, whereas I was really fighting the other ones. Okay, so we're just finding the light and the shadow. Okay, and we've got a leg back here that's really in shadow. If you want your color to be a little darker, like where it is darker, you can add more blue. If it's getting too dark, add a little more burnt sienna and Gamsol. So we want this area here to be darker. And then we've got sort of this little knob off the back of the leg. Now, one thing that you see, like when you're painting animals and people, what artists study, and this is a common part of art training, is learning anatomy for different animals. And that's also why you see people who are sort of specialists on certain animals, because they really learn the anatomy of those animals. And there are some animals that have very similar anatomy, but then there are others that's just totally different. Like the way the legs bend is different. Painting birds is different than painting cows. But if you learn to train yourself to paint what you see, then you don't worry as much about the anatomy. You worry about okay, am I painting what I'm seeing? Am I being faithful to that? Okay, and then let's put these spots in. All right, you see how our cow's sort of taking shape? So I got this blacker color by mixing in more blue. That made it a little bit more black. And I don't ever get too uptight about, unless you're painting like a prize-winning cow to memorialize the cow or something, I don't worry about making sure that the spots are exactly the same. Especially if there are spots where I don't like them. Like this cow has really nice spots, but if there's spots where I don't like them or something, I don't feel like you have to stick to that. You can just sort of put them wherever you want to. Okay, we've got another spot here. And sorry guys, I'll stop in a minute and look at questions, but I know if I stop too often doing this, we just will not get through it. Oops. Okay, I'm gonna switch to my flat brush. So this is just sort of a brush that's a little straighter. Oh, somebody asked where they can see my peony painting, so I'll show it to you. It's on Instagram right now on my stories, but I haven't posted it anywhere else. I shared it on my stories like when I was in the middle of just hating it, and I was like, if ever I want to do peonies again, just stop me. Just tell me don't do it. It is not worth it. The trouble. It ended up turning out okay, but I'm sure as you guys have experienced as you've been working on painting, there are some paintings that during the process of the painting, you just are really enjoying it. Like you just kind of love the process. You're just having a good time. You're happy with how it's turning out. And then there are other times when you're painting and you're like, I just hate this. Like you're just at war with it. It's not turning out right. It's frustrating. You keep having to wipe it back, and that's what I was experiencing. I was just super frustrated last night. Jeff came in and I'm like, you just need to leave me alone because I'm not happy right now with what I'm doing. He was like, well, is it for a class or something? Like, why are you doing it? I'm like, no, this is completely self-inflicted. Okay, I'm just sort of using this brush that has a little bit more, it's a little more rigid to kind of straighten these spots out. And we'll kind of get these a little bit better too as we... So there's also different styles. Like this is just how I paint. There are artists who will paint completely in sections. Like they will get all of the detail and everything done on the head, and then they'll move on to another area. I have just always painted in passes. So I sort of, you know, I'll kind of get everything done along, oops, I'm looking at this here while I'm trying to talk, but I'll sort of get everything done, like all the underpainting done, and then I'll move on to adding all the shadows, and then I'll move on to adding the midtones, and I kind of work on it all together. I think it's just, for me, that's how I just work better. I like seeing how the painting is coming together all as a whole. But if you find that you just sort of camp out on one area and that's where you do, you know, and you want to get that area done, then that's fine too. It really, there's no wrong way to do it. It's just what your process is. And everybody's process is going to be a little bit different. See, this needs to be darker because it's almost as dark as between the legs here. I feel like this is an area that's going to be a little bit of a problem area for me. Okay, I'll get this little dark spot. And then we need to make sure we get this. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is use Gamsol to wipe out the white spots. I just checked the comments and I see not a lot of new comments. So you guys are, I think everybody's concentrating and painting. So what I'm doing is I'm taking this flat brush and I'm dipping it into my Gamsol and wiping away a little bit of excess. And then I'm gonna sort of use it to scrub out the highlights. And you can see it's pulling the paint up, but then it's leaving the paint just kind of sitting there. So then I'm gonna come back with a paper towel and kind of wipe it away. Gonna scrub that spot in a little bit more. And then the brush will start to kind of get paint on it. All right, let me get so I like using these Selecta-size paper towels so I can have smaller pieces. So if I'm trying to get into this sort of small area, it can be kind of a challenge. So with this rolled paper towel, I can be a little bit more accurate. And then you can use you'll get a little Gamsol on the paper towel and you can kind of use that to wipe things away. I think cow spots are kind of like clouds. You just want to make sure that you're staying random enough. If it starts looking too like, I don't know. If it starts looking too uniform, it can look like a polka dotted cow and not like an actual spotted cow from nature. So just sort of be aware of that. And that's also where it helps to sort of take a step back and look like, is this really, does this look like a naturally spotted cow? The cool thing about painting a spotted cow too, and in these colors, is we really are, we're not going to have to adjust the colors too much. We're going to add in some grays and, you know, we'll add in white and all of that, but you really could paint an entire cow just with this technique and it could look very realistic. And then if your paper towel starts getting kind of saturated to where it's not wiping the paint away very well, you can even just dip your paper towel into solvents too, or the Gamsol. Okay, we want to get down the front of the legs because we've got a nice highlight there. Oh, I love this part. It's so cool how once you start adding the light, just how it creates such dimension to something that you're painting, whatever you're painting. Paper towel is such a great tool, especially if you're kind of someone who paints a little uptight. It can really help you not be uptight because you can only be but so precise. with paper towel. Okay, and we have a tiny little highlight there, a little one there. Okay, I feel pretty good about that. I think we can start adding some color. I'll sort of put in a rough bit of grass and then let me check. Oh, hi, Charlene. Good to see you here. Charlene used to work for me when I lived in Gettysburg, or in Biglerville, actually. And on the blog, we called her Mini Mustard Seed. She helped with a lot of stuff, making projects and things. And she's got 2 babies of her own now, though, is all grown up. All right, so we'll just put in sort of a base of grass here. And I'm using a just kind of a big natural bristle brush here. I know I'm using some brushes that I haven't used before in our classes, and this can just kind of give you an idea of some that might be good to take a look at purchasing. I like this is about a 1/2 inch natural bristle brush. And it's great to have just for washing a canvas and for things like this when you have kind of large areas. So, and I'm sort of doing an upward stroke just to start giving kind of the look of grass here. I think the last time I painted this cow, it was, I think I did it on an 8x10. So I'm gonna have more grass and more sky in this one. And then I think the last thing I'm gonna do for the underpainting, no, I'm going to leave it. I was maybe going to wipe out a couple of clouds, but I think we're going to leave the sky just really soft and let the focus be the cloud. Let the focus be the cow. Okay, let me check for questions. Christina, no, this is not acrylic paint. This is oil paint. So I'm putting my Gamsol away. We're all done with that. We're just going to start adding color now. We've got the underpainting done. I'm happy with where we are. All right, I got to take this off. I'll show you kind of up close of what we're looking at now. And let me see if you have any questions. What are you using for the paint for the initial drawing? So I'm using a mix of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. Whoops, right here. Burnt sienna, ultramarine blue mixed together with Gamsol. Thanks, Tamara. She said, great teaching. Welcome from Michigan, first time watching. Okay. And a lot of hellos. Okay. Let me see if there's any other questions. Could you show where you are middle tone? So I'm using, this is all the same mix of colors. It's just like this one has more Gamsol added and has been patted away. This middle one has, the ratio of burnt sienna to ultramarine blue is a little bit, there's more burnt sienna than ultramarine blue. When in the darker spots, it's more ultramarine blue than burnt sienna, so it makes sort of more of a black. I can also change the darkness and lightness based on how much Gamsol is in it. So you just have to kind of play around with that. Colors for the grass, we're going to use ultramarine blue, and we're going to use some cadmium yellow and burnt sienna. Sorry about this, guys. I thought I was adjusting it the right way and I wasn't. Okay. All right, there we go. Okay, let me tilt you a little better there. Okay, I think we're all focused on the cow. All right, so we're gonna start with the shadows. And so I've wiped away this because I don't want Gamsol. I don't want a lot of Gamsol in there. So I'm gonna do ultramarine blue. Whoops, can you see this? Ultramarine blue, burnt sienna. I'm gonna make kind of a black. We'll start working on spots and shadows. So these are definitely black. And the reason why I use this mixture for my black, first of all, then it's, you know, it's one less color that I have to have on my palette. I like to use really as few colors as I need. It helps with creating harmony with the, in the painting, as opposed to using like a separate tube for every color. And then it also just, I think it helps me a lot with color mixing, with kind of staying focused. It's less paint to buy. I can buy in bulk tubes. So this is where I'm going to really work on making the spots the shape I want. And I'm using the hard bristled brush. I kind of ended up making a triangle there, and I don't want a triangle. Okay, that's a better shape. So again, take a step back, look at your shapes, make sure you're happy with them. So in this, like I said, sometimes you have to really pay attention to the spots, because sometimes, like the ones up here, this might look much lighter than the ones in shadow. What I'm seeing in this cow, and it may have more to do with the photography or the way it was edited than so much the way it maybe looked in real life, is the spots really look the same in the light and in the shadow. So I can kind of do them all together in one color. There are some cows I've done that have, like, the spots are dramatically different if they're in highlight or in shadow. So since this is the darkest, the spots are the darkest part of the painting, that's what I'm starting with. And it's just, I'm mixing up a little bit more ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. I use those colors more than any other colors. I could do, if I had to pick like 2 colors and white, it would be ultramarine blue and burnt sienna all day long. You can do so much with these colors. You could do whole portraits with just these colors. You can do all sorts of animals, and landscapes would be tough because you need a yellow to have green. So then I would add in yellow ochre would be my next choice, which is why that's one of our colors, and then cadmium yellow to get brighter greens and brighter yellows too. Okay, now what I'm seeing here, this is where we really need to pay attention, because what it looks like is we've got just this massive dark, but if you look at it carefully, the ear is just a little bit lighter. So we're gonna make sure that we make this line really dark so that then we can make the ear a little bit lighter, kind of set it apart. Right, and then let's get this one, this little spot here, got a little, comes down a little. And again, kind of check your shape, make sure you're happy with the shape of it. Okay, and then we've got this little bit here. And do your best to make sure that your cow is not growing as you're working on things. We tend to, as we're fixating on things, we tend to make them bigger. So keep checking all of your lines. Okay, so when I'm looking at, so I think I've got well, let me get the inside of this ear. So I want to keep the top of this ear lighter anyway. So I'm just going to focus on the inside of the ear. And then we've got a little more of a spot under the ear. And the spot kind of around the ear. This ear over here is pretty good. I don't think we need to mess with that. And we'll put the white over it. What I'm talking about watching things growing, our tendency is when we're fixating on this is to maybe enlarge it a little without even really realizing it. And then, you know, our cow then has enormous ears and we're like, wait, what happened? I traced it. I'm trying to follow all the lines. So just really try to be mindful of all of that. Okay, now we're going to start doing the shadows. And so for the shadows, we're going to take this same mixture that you're using. So are you asking, so Lori likes it as it is. Yeah. And you could call this done. I think for me, especially when you zoom in on it, it just doesn't look finished, but some people do paintings just like this. I'm not using anything to thin my oil paints right now. You don't use water with oil paints. Christina, that's for you. If you want to thin your oil paint, then you need to use Gamsol or something like a turpentine paint thinner. If you're using acrylics, then you would thin with water. But acrylics dry really fast. Oils take a long time to dry, so they give you more time for to manipulate them. So I think in that sense, they're a lot more forgiving. So I'm mixing up ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and I've added white to make a gray. And I want to make this a bit more of a blue gray. And I only added a little bit of white. You don't want to add too much white because we still want this to be pretty dark because we're now hitting into our darkest shadows. And if it's too light, then add more ultramarine blue and burnt sienna to it to make it a little darker, which I feel like mine was a little too light. Now, for me, that's my choice to make my shadows a little bit bluer. You can make yours a little warmer by using more burnt sienna. And I will do some warm shadows too. All right, so this part of the belly is dark, but then this part's a little lighter, so gotta pay attention to that. We've got this is where some of the nuances are gonna come in also. So let's see where else this really dark color is. This is right here. And under the neck. We're just gonna put this color everywhere we see it. Oops, I've got something on my brush that is dragging through the paint. There we go. It's probably some crusty dry paint or something. I can hear my husband singing. He's in the kitchen. I don't know if you guys can hear him. Okay. He has a great voice, which I never knew that till after we were married and we were listening to the musical Les Miserables, and he was singing along, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, who did I marry? What happened? Do you hear him? he has a really good voice. He's a good tenor. Anyway, so it was fun because for those who don't know, I grew up doing musical theater, and so it was like it was really cool for me that he sang, and so we used to sing together in church a lot. Okay, just like a little glimpse in my life. Okay. All right, so I feel like we've got it maybe a little bit in the face. We've got a little bit of this dark. I think that's it for the most part. So I'm gonna add a little bit more white. Yes, Sandra, you can hear him singing. He's a good tenor. All right, so I'm gonna add more white to this mix, and I'm gonna add a little bit more burnt sienna to it also. So now we're going to go to kind of the things that are next lightest. So along this leg is just a little bit lighter. And here is a little lighter. Let me tell you, when I'm working on these two, I know I've said this before, but I'm always thinking like, I don't know if this is really gonna turn out. This is kind of looking like a mess. And then, you know, it just always kind of comes together. I'm adding a little more burnt sienna so it's a little warmer. All right, and we want to get this. We might move that spot. Just finding everywhere sort of this. Now they're clapping. I don't know what my family's doing in there. Okay, we'll do this in here. And guys, you can I know some of you are going to be super, super detailed. Some of you are not, and that's okay. I get very, very overwhelmed with too much detail, which is why the peonies were really overwhelming me. I don't know what they're all clapping at. Okay. Well, they're providing a little entertainment here. I usually do listen to music when I'm painting. So, oops, we've got some spots back here that I'm just noticing now. So I'm gonna mix up a little bit of black. Get those spots back there. He's singing some more. Okay, I think I'm gonna make this back leg a little darker. Do you see how these legs really just run together? I'm gonna make just a decision to make that back leg a little darker. I'm gonna make the knee a little lighter. And then this front knee here, like, you know, when cows get down on their knees, I guess their knees get dirty just like everybody else's. So I'm gonna make a darker spot that's much more brown, more burnt sienna in it. And just a little bit of ultramarine to make sort of a dark spot. And then I need to add a little white to that, and then let's see, to do this one is in the sun, so that one's a little lighter. Okay, Then I need to make this a little bit lighter. So I'm just continuing to kind of tweak this same pile. If you've painted with me a lot, you know that's kind of what I do. So I'm gonna make it a little warmer too. I'm gonna add a little more burnt sienna, and I'm gonna add just a little bit more yellow ochre. But this is what I do. I sort of mix initial piles and then keep mixing off of those piles. But again, every artist has a different way of doing it. So don't feel like, you know, if that's what works for you, then great. If it doesn't work for you, if it doesn't serve you, then don't do that. So what I want to look at is, where does this shadow hit as in relation to the leg? And it's sort of right where this arch is. So that's where I'm going to make this. And I know right now, like, it looks very gray. I don't know, it's kind of like, I know it's going to look different for you because you guys are looking at it through a camera, which is a great way to kind of double check a painting, looking at it through a camera. But it always, I don't know, it's like, I don't know if that color is really gray, but it is. Or once we kind of finish everything else, it'll all really make sense. Just right in the beginning, it looks a little off. You just have to kind of trust yourself, trust what you're looking at. And if you watch another artist paint a cow, like the way they do it is going to be total, you know, well, maybe not totally different. This is a fairly traditional approach that I'm taking. But there are other, you know, you're going to see other artists who their approach is different. And I think that's why art classes are just they're so fun to take, because you can always learn something. Oh, we gotta get this little hollow up here. We've got a little bit of shadow up here, so we'll add that in. And a little bit up there, but it's a little warmer, so I'm going to add a little more burnt sienna, a little more yellow ochre, a little more white. And put the little shadow behind I don't know, is it a mane on a cow, or do they call it something else? I don't even know. I'm also going to use this color here. We've got a little bit of differentiation there. Oh, we got to do the shadow on the face. Okay, we can use this lighter color here. And let me go back to, this is one reason why I keep sort of this graduation of colors, so that I can, if I need to go back to a darker color, I can go back to it. I still have some of it, and I can use it to mix and make more. If you get rid of the color altogether, then you're gonna, I mean, you can probably mix more, but it might be a little harder. Especially when we're only using 2 colors. That's a nice thing too, is it's like, well, I don't, you know, all I've been using here is ultramarine blue, burnt sienna. Sorry, somebody was calling me. Let's see, we have a little highlight down here. Just a little one. And even sort of the underside of the belly has a little highlight. Like a little bit of light reflecting up off of the grass. Okay, back to this. You can also choose like how hard and soft you want your lines to be. Do you want them to be blended? Do you want them to be really a bit more harsh? And all of that's up to you. That's all just artistic choices. How much blending you want to do, all of that. Got a little bit there. And then I think just a little variation here. We'll put a little bit of a darker line here. So, I mean, you can just tweak with this till like all eternity. Just keep going back and forth. So, all right, let's put our tail in. So I'm going to use one of these kind of darker colors here. And we've got the wind kind of blowing the tail. And it needs to be a little browner, so I'm going to add a little more burnt sienna. And then we'll add a little bit more white behind it, I think. A little more, I'm adding some white, a little yellow ochre, a little burnt sienna. Just kind of need to tell them to stop clapping. I don't know what they're doing. Okay, and then I need to come in with this kind of lighter. It's just sort of a yellow ochre. It's kind of a beige, yellow ochre, burnt sienna mixed with a little bit of the gray and some white, and come in and get some of these lighter colors. We're not quite to white. The tendency is we see this and we're like, ooh, it's white, but it's not. It's still pretty dark. But since we see that it's a black and white cow, we want to go for the white. And like we talked about with the clouds, if you go to the white too soon, then there's just nowhere for you to go after that. So you've got to be disciplined with when you pull your white out and just save it for the very, very end. And we're going to use this color as sort of a transition color too. And I will sort of soften some of these lines. Just going to get all the color on first and then sort of figure out how much of it I want to soften. I'm not sure what that is. Not sure what I was doing there. I want that to be a little lighter and this to be a little lighter. We do have a little bit of a highlight back here. You can even do all sorts of like, you can add all sorts of colors in here. It's awesome to see people who, I tend to take things very literally, but people who put like all sorts of blues and pinks and all sorts of things in their in their cows, and yet they still look so realistic. Like, it's just amazing to me. And I'm just not quite that, I'm a little too literal. So to this pile of kind of a light gray, I'm going to add a little bit more white, and I'm going to add a little bit of yellow ochre to it. So again, I don't want this to be perfectly white yet. We're going to save that for the very end, but we're going to start adding in the whites. And don't worry about these edges too much, because we're going to, you know, when we paint the sky around it, we can sort of add some more shape. So don't worry too much about if you're, you know, going out of the lines or anything. And we'll also come back at the end and add in our bright white highlights. In some ways, painting a spotted cow is a little bit like, just this part anyway, like painting clouds and kind of cutting the sky in around it. It's just sort of the randomness of it and shaping and reshaping to get a shape that looks natural. The reason why I think animals are tough, and portraits too, and I've said this in other classes, but I'll say it now, especially if you're feeling a little frustrated or anything, is because with a landscape, you really can get away with kind of making some things up and putting things where you want them to be. When you're dealing with a cow or a person, especially if you want it to look like that, you want people to be able to tell it's a cow, or you want them to be able to tell which person it is. You're dealing with likeness, and then that becomes, you know, a difficult thing to achieve if you don't pay attention to the details, or if you're struggling with your drawing, or if you're not paying close attention to where things belong. And then it gets frustrating. And I have one of my early cows. It did sell, and I'm still, you know, I'm proud of it and all, but it, like, the face was just really long. It just ended up kind of looking more like a horse. But I got all sorts of lovely comments from people who said that sometimes cows do have longer faces like that. So even though it really was, I just drew the face a little too long. I didn't double check enough. And also, so I remember reading an art book. I don't remember which one it is specifically, but I remember looking at the drawing, and it was really amazing. It was this drawing of a cat, and the author was kind of, and it was her own drawing, but she was kind of picking it apart and saying like, oh, well, I need to fix this, and I can see that this is off, and I just remember being like, man, I just don't want to be this critical. That's no fun for me. I want to just kind of be able to paint and enjoy the process. I sort of left this empty because it's kind of a brighter white. So I'm adding a little bit more white, a little bit more yellow ochre to the mix, just to make it a little brighter. But I'm like, I just want to paint and have fun with it, and not like overthink everything and just critique everything to death to the point where it's no fun. So I've tried to do that, but I do notice, like, the more I paint, the more kind of the more critical I become of my work, and the more, you know, I'm not as satisfied with things if I can clearly see like, ooh, the composition's not good, or so it's all of that to say, especially like if you see me criticizing my work and then you're like, well, she must think mine is terrible then. It's just we're far more critical of our own work, and I think you're more critical of yourself at different stages of your artistic journey. So I just, especially when you're starting out, you have to be gentle with yourself. But as you start to grow as an artist, then I think you can be a bit more critical, because then you start to, you know, you learn more. All right, so I'm adding in this kind of a little bit of a brighter white in the places that look a little brighter, but I'm still not like 100% white. This is still, we still have a little room to go. Okay, so there we go. So what I'm going to do at this point now, I'm pretty much done with the cow, except for little finishing details, like adding a little eyelash. Oh, let's give him a little muzzle. Okay, so I'm going to do just some burnt sienna and some white. And you just get these lovely little pinks with that. You need a little lighter. You wouldn't think that color, burnt sienna, would make pink, but it does. All right, so we've got a little muzzle there, and we can kind of tidy that up a little bit. Let me fix that with a little white over it. It was a little too round. And then I'm gonna go back to my black that I've mixed up and add in a little nostril there. And I need to add a little bit more, it needs to be a little warmer around it. Okay, not quite what I had in mind. Let's try to fix that there. This is like how my peonies were, like painting this nostril. That's like what the peonies were. It was just like constantly, ugh, what did I just do? This doesn't look like what I want. And it's like, that's just going to be a great place for a blade of grass. That's what that is. It's going to be a good spot for that. So let's make it a little bit lighter there. And let's make it a little bit darker on the other side. And then a little darker on the underside. All right, well, just there's something about it that I'm not liking, but so I'm looking at, where does it line up? I feel like it's lining up right. Maybe we just need a little more shadow under it. Okay. All right, let's I think we're gonna go ahead and, I'm just looking and thinking here for a second. We will sort of soften these edges a little bit. I think what I'd like to do right now is do the sky. We've got a little, this isn't connecting well enough. I'm sort of making any little adjustments that I need to make. This is a good time to just sort of take a step back for a second, change anything. And I think this needs, we lost this a little bit. That needs to be a little darker. Again, this could just, you could just tweak all day long. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna add the sky. So I'm gonna use this bigger brush. Just use the biggest brush that you have on hand. I'll get a finer brush in when we're getting into some details, but I'm gonna do ultramarine blue. We need a decent amount of that. Oops. We need white with it. And I'm going to add some yellow because I just really like yellow in my sky. And I'm gonna add just a little bit of burnt sienna just to gray it out a little bit. I don't like, as much as I love blue, I like my skies a little bit on the grayer side, but that's just me. This is, you can mix up whatever kind of sky color you like. And since we're covering a large area, this is where I would use like a linseed oil or something. So you don't have to, but I'm gonna use a little bit. I just kind of dip my brush in, grab a little bit out. And it's just kind of thinning this paint out just a little bit. So for me, that is still too blue. So I've added more burnt sienna and I'm gonna add more white. Still gonna tweak this color, more yellow, more white. Okay, and I'm gonna have it be a little darker up top, and then I'm gonna keep making it whiter as we get. Okay, so this is where we're gonna use this brush to help us make some edges. Oh, and I've had quite a few people lately asking me about my easel. So this is it's a Sienna counterweight easel, studio easel. And it has, if you notice, well, I don't know if you can't see them right now, but maybe there you can. In the back there are weights, and I can just by handle, I can pull I can adjust the height of this, and it will hold enormous canvases and also really small ones. I paint fairly small, so this one is a bit of overkill, but I knew that this was something I really wanted to pursue, so I saved all the money from selling any paintings that people wanted to buy, I would sell them. And I used that money to buy this easel. And so I think I think about $1,200, and it's great to invest in a good easel if that is, if you're really planning on using it a lot and painting, to sell and stuff like that. If not, just like an H easel from oops, I've gotten to the part that was a little too blue. Even just like an H easel from an art store on wheels, those are going to be great. You're going to be using like cranks though to move your work up and down. And I'm so glad I got this, because with my shoulder, I have to kind of change the height occasionally. Like even this has been a little bit much of reaching up my shoulder. I had shoulder surgery in the fall. I'm still recovering from. Oops, I got a little piece of old paint there. Okay. But if you're just painting for fun or you don't have a lot of space, then just a little tabletop easel, those are fantastic. And I know, like majorly, like big time professional artists who use, just a $100 studio easel, nothing fancy. So I'm using this big brush intentionally so that I'm cutting out lines that aren't too perfect. But I'm trying to pay attention to the angle of every line. Especially around the face, because that's what kind of gives character. And then I'm sort of brushing it out, because what I don't want is like this halo around the cow. So I'm kind of moving it around so it looks like sky behind it, not like sky and then we've got this sort of outline around our cow. I don't want that. So since I painted this cow about a year ago, I'm really interested to see if I paint it the same or if I what changes I make, if I improved at all. It's kind of fun. Okay, and I'm gonna have to cut in with a smaller brush here. Okay, so I'm switching to this little, our little straight brush. I'm I'm looking at the cow and kind of paying attention to the lines. This is a place where you can kind of correct your drawing, and it's also a place where you can, if your drawing was good, you can kind of mess it up by cutting in somewhere at the wrong angle or we have to kind of make this part up a little bit because we've got that cow back there. How's everybody doing? Everybody coming along okay with your cows? Are you still with me here? This was, I think, the most requested thing when I talked about doing a class was cows. And this is the last one just because I have other projects that I need to work on. But I think I'll be freed up again in the fall. And then, oops, I gotta get more white. I think I'll be freed up a little bit more in the fall. And then I'll do some sort of art classes. Probably something a little bit more formally where we can have a private Facebook group and all of that. But we'll see. I haven't put that plan together yet. This has been such a fun thing to do though while we've been at home. It's been really good community for me. I know while I'm not able to go out and see people or not having church, all that stuff. This has been a fun thing. Just a good distraction, a good way to connect with different readers, different followers, people who are, really interested in the how-to of art. I guess of my art specifically, what I do, because there's lots of good stuff out there, lots of great art programs out there, lots of great YouTube channels that teach art. Okay, I do not want this mixed in with my sky here. Okay, so right now I'm working on my edges a little bit. I don't want these edges to be too hard. So I'm working on sort of softening them up. Same thing up here. Just kind of like feathering these a little bit. Let's see, we'll kind of do the same with these. So I'm wiping my brush off in between. I'm sort of feathering them a little bit and then wiping my brush off. And as I'm doing this, I want to make sure I'm keeping an eye on the painting, on the picture, so that I'm not, messing up something that's an important part of the anatomy of the cow. I feel like right here, you know, I'm gonna just kind of for fun, I'm gonna use a little bit of the blue of the sky and mix it in a little bit with some of these grays that I have. And I'm gonna use, feel like I'm seeing, and it's probably my printer, but I feel like I'm seeing some blues in here. And I'm just gonna add them in just for a little harmony, a little personal choice. Not gonna add too much in, just some. Okay, and then I need to add some white. I'm getting some nice clean white in a clean pile here, and I'm gonna add some cadmium yellow to it. A little bit goes a long way. And this is gonna be, I'm gonna add in some warmer, brighter highlights here. I'm gonna add this where the sun is hitting the hardest. Definitely on the face here. Cadmium yellow to white, it kind of gives things a real sun-kissed look too. And then back here, okay, and then I'm going to use a little bit with yellow ochre and a little bit mixed with gray, kind of like a mid-tone color, just to get, I feel like we need a little bit brighter back here, just a little bit. And I want a little bit of highlight through the tail. A little bit more highlight right there. Now these highlights aren't going to be as bright as the highlights in the front because the sun's not directly hitting them. We just want a little bit more highlight because we've got the sun catching a little bit. Okay, and then I'm gonna blend this out a little bit. I'm gonna put a little bit more of this blue-gray right here. So this is just, it's sort of just pulling from my colors and picking where I want to make, you know, some adjustments, sort of feather things out a little bit. Where I want to leave the lines hard, where I want to soften them. this a little bit. This is all just personal choice kind of stuff. This leg grew a little bit, so. Okay, I feel like that's good. I'm gonna go ahead and add in grass. So I'm gonna use this kind of bushy brush, and we'll start with, let's start with a new pile. And I'm gonna look at questions in a minute. So we're gonna start with sort of a darker grass. So we're gonna do ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and then just start adding a little bit of cadmium yellow. And we'll do a little bit more. So just to get like a dark green. And I'm just gonna kind of like just smush it on. And I'm gonna get a little bit of mixture that's a little more a little more burnt sienna, so it's a little warmer. We don't want to draw every blade of grass. And because of the perspective, we really don't see his shadow. But we're going to add enough detail that it tells the eye this is grass. Okay, I'm going to put in some more cadmium yellow, make it a little bit lighter. And I'm going to go up now, kind of up to the sky. And it's okay if we get a little sky mixed in, a little lighter color down here. And what we're doing right now is thinking about like the grass that's in the distance that we're not going to really see detail of, but that's going to be kind of behind our grass. The other thing that we want to think about is we've got the tail blowing this way. That's going to give this really great illusion of wind. And we can see like we have kind of we can imagine this day, like it's this cloudless, breezy day. And so when we add in the grass, we want the grass going in the same direction, especially when we get longer blades in. So we're just putting in some variation of color. You can even put in a little bit of the sky color just here and there. That's kind of... Okay, so we've got kind of a good foundation for grass going there. And now I think I'm still gonna use this brush, but I'm gonna wipe it clean, and let's add in some brighter greens. I'm gonna mix in a little bit more cadmium yellow, and I'm gonna mix in a little bit of white. And if your green is too bright, add a little bit of burnt sienna. That'll tone it down. And then we're gonna just sort of get some more tufts of grass going. We're going to use a different brush to add some detail. Right now, this is still just about, and when doing something like grass, you want to work from back to front because that's the way we're seeing it. We're seeing it, what we see up front is going to be in front of what's behind here. So we don't want to, it would look really weird to have like this blade of grass is in front of this one. It's just not, so you want to kind of be mindful of that. Work from the back to the front. And you can make your grass however long you want it. If you want to put like flowers in there, you can. Okay, and then I'm going to switch to a different brush, and we can use the straight brush for that. Whoops, let's see. Hang on, let me plug in my phone real quick so my battery doesn't die. While I stop real quick, how's everybody doing? Let me look at any questions you have. So do you have any paint you don't use for one painting? Oh, wait, how do you save? Oh, how do I save the paints? So I'll show you what I do at the end. Yes, so I see Joan answering a question about oils drying different or the same when they're wet. And yeah, I mean, they look the same to me. What some people do is they'll put linseed oil over the paint when they're done, because when you put oil over the paint, that can change the look of it. So if you put oil over it, it shows you what the painting will look like when it's varnished. Yes, Sandra, acrylics can look different when they're dry. That's true. What you are going to get, though, is some paints are going to look glossy, even with oils. Some paints are going to look glossy, some are going to look matte. And that's another reason for adding the varnish over it. It sort of makes them all the same color. It also makes your dark colors deeper and richer. Oh, Debbie, that's funny. Are you watching somebody painting a cow or a cow painting? It would be more interesting if it was a cow doing painting. That would be. Okay. Let me see what else. Okay, so Tanya, you're going to go back and try. Yeah, I mean, this one's the hardest one we're doing, but, you know, you can do it. It's like a little bit at a time. And I see here, oh, I've got a little humpback cow. I'm going to fix that with sky color. Okay. Heidi, yes, I have a bunch of paintings that I'm going to list. Actually, while we're here, let me show you. So I'm going to be listing all of these. I'm going to be listing, I have a bunch here. I'm going to be listing all of these guys. I've got a bunch of minis that I'm going to be listing, and I've been doing landscapes on clear primed linen, and then I've been doing color charts. So I'm going to sell all of these. I've got some more minis. I've got some index card paintings I'm going to be selling. Like I said, I'm going to be selling all but like maybe 2 or 3 of those. And then I've got all of these that I'm going to be selling. So somebody asked the peonies painting, so there's that. And I've got some pears and some landscapes and some still life paintings. So I'm going to be selling those. And let me swing you back around. All right. What was I going to do? Oh, plug my phone in. Let's see. Sometimes if you have trouble painting detail, yeah, turn it upside down and it becomes clearer. And that is true. I've never done that, painting things upside down, because you can't do that in real life. That's the only thing. I know that that's a very common practice, so I think that's a great suggestion, Joan. I know a lot of people do suggest it, but I've never used it because I'm like, well, I can't really, sorry, I'm fixing my tripod, guys. You know, I can't do that in real life, so I need to learn other techniques to be able to do that. Yes, and Heidi, if you subscribe to my blog, then you can see or I'll send an email out to share when my paintings are going live. And thank you, Joan. I appreciate that. I am going to fix it a little bit. How long do you wait before you varnish? So if you use Gamvar, you can varnish once it's dry to the touch. So that's after a few days, I'll varnish it. And it depends on how thick you apply your paint to. If you apply it really thick, then you might need to wait longer. If it's really thin, then you can varnish it sooner. If you're using a different kind of varnish, some of them you have to wait months to varnish a painting. But with Gamvar, you can varnish it right away. I use a gloss varnish because it's funny, I like my furniture matte and I like my oil paintings glossy. I just feel like oil paintings should look glossy. That's just my personal opinion. So I use Gamvar Gloss. And hi, Linda, that's my mother-in-law. Good to see you here. And it's either Bridget or Brigitte asked about my price range. Pricing is something that's really tough for me. So I sell the smaller landscapes are usually around, I've been selling them around between $25 and $45 or so. And then the bigger paintings or painting like this cow, I'll put them on auction. I have just found that way other people can decide what they're going to pay. And it's less stressful for me. And also it gives everybody a chance to purchase one. So if they really want to, they can bid. And then the paintings usually end up selling for much higher than I would have priced them. So that's generally what I do. And then, I mean, they can go anywhere from, I don't know, I've had a painting sell, I think my max is 600. I had a painting sell for 600, but that was like a really big portrait. So most of these can sell for around, I'd say 100 to 200 for a painting like this. And again, I let other people decide, so I don't have to. Like, I'll start this one probably around 50 and just let it go from there. All right, so we fixed the little hunchback, and I may need to do more work on that. But I just want to finish the grass for you guys here. And so I'm going to use this straight brush, and I'm going to add in just some longer. And again, it's okay if the sky color gets mixed in a bit. And it's kind of fun to do some, like, you've got a blade that's going off. And again, we're going to work from the back to the front. We can add some darker blades in there if we want. And you want to keep these light. Now, I'm using this brush because it's the brush that we have, but let me show you a brush that I love for grass. I got to grab it from... I've had to put my brushes in a cabinet because I have a cat who loves brushes, and she'll jump up and she'll sniff them and pick out the brush that she wants, and then she'll go running off with it. And okay, so this is called a dagger. It's by Rosemary & Company, and this is called an evergreen dagger. This is a 1/4 inch. These are wonderful for making straight lines. So what I'm gonna do, because I wanna do thin lines, I am gonna use some of my mixture. This is the mixture that Carol Marine uses to thin down her paint, or you can just use linseed oil. And for those who are, I just want to say, for those who are joining me for the first time, this one is more complicated than other ones that we've done. If you're like, this is way too much, then you need to start with one of the simpler ones, the landscapes or something else. And then these are just fantastic. You do little flicks and you get these wonderful, very, very light blades of grass that look very realistic. And you can do, don't get too carried away. I want to add some. We don't want it to, let's put one over his nostril there, because and we can put some kind of behind there. We can draw a few back here, like they're way back behind the cow. You want to make sure you go in all different directions. So it's not like, I don't know, your grass is growing in rows and it's all growing in the same direction. And then we can put in some that are a little bit more yellow, catching a little bit more light. Okay, we're putting in a few individual blades here. Again, we don't want to draw every single one. And then I'll come in with like our smushy bushy brush and just sort of cover up the bottoms of those. And you just, oh, there goes the picture. You can just do that till you're like, I'm happy with that, till you step back and feel like you're happy with it. And I'm gonna go ahead and call it done. Again, I might do a little more zhuzhing. So I use a rubber brush to sign my paintings. And if you sign it like right when you're done, it will scratch out the paint, but leave the color in the underpainting. So you get a nice, neat signature. I found it so hard to sign with a, what am I trying to say? With a brush and paint. I just found that to be very difficult. It may be my name also. I don't know, Parsons. I just wasn't sure how to, the S's were hard. That's what, just found it very difficult. So fix that a little bit. And I would say, for those of you who are painting, like don't be shy about trying to sell your work. I mean, maybe no one wants to buy it, but maybe someone does. I was really surprised that now I already have an audience that I've built up, but you know, I was just really surprised that people wanted to buy my early paintings. And I think it was part that they wanted to be a part of the journey. They wanted to support me, and I think people genuinely liked them too. Art is so subjective, so I don't know, just don't rob yourself of that opportunity, especially if you have people asking. All right, I think we're done, guys. Let's see. I wanted to let you know how I cleaned the palette because people have asked, and I'll answer any questions too. So let me take this off. Thank you, Joan. I appreciate it. And yeah, I'll put it in my next round of paintings. I'll wait for it to dry. And Joan just got some brushes from Rosemary & Co. They're great. Okay. Yeah, you can send along some cow pictures, Joan. I would love them. And Sandra, you're welcome. I've enjoyed these during this time too. It's been a lot of fun. I do expect to see some cows, guys. I'd love for you to tag me in them on Instagram at Miss Mustard Seed, or you can send them to me by email, marian@missmustardseed.com. My viewers have loved seeing your paintings and how you've done them. Here, I'll turn the camera around so you can see. Whoop. Okay. So you can see me. Yeah, it's very flattering, Marianne, right there. There's like no way to do this so that you look good. There's just no way. Here we go. Okay. Oh, and I'm all crooked. Okay, so how I clean the palette. The camera's over there. I keep looking over this way and the camera's that way. Okay, so the way I clean off this palette is I'm going to take a palette knife and here we go. I'll take a palette knife and I'm going to scrape all the paint together. Now what you can do, and what I would suggest doing if you're new to painting or whatever, is using these colors and making a little color chart for future reference. So before you scrape them off, do that. I've made tons of color charts. And what I've learned through making color charts is I mix the same colors over and over again. So I don't need to write down formulas because I just intuitively do it. So I'm going to mix all the colors together. I usually end up with some sort of a green, blue, sort of a mixture. Like this. So I'm going to get this all nice and mixed. I'm going to take all the extra paint and I'm going to set it. This is my little leftover paint section here. Then when I do my next painting, I can pull from here when I need grays or neutrals or greens or whatever. And then what I'll do with the rest is I'm going to take, I'm going to clean off my palette knife and I'm going to, let me just show you what I'm doing right here. There we go. Brilliant camera work. Like doing live camera stuff, being your own cameraman on a phone, all that is not the easiest thing. Okay, so now I'm just scraping off all of this extra paint. And guys, a wooden palette is fantastic, and you can get them for really cheap off of, at art supply stores and stuff. Or if you're someone who likes antiques and you're super nostalgic, you can find antique palettes that are, that are still usable. Like they don't have just paint caked all in the middle of them. So this white, I ended up scraping up too much little junk. So I can use this. I'll set it aside and I'll use that. So we've got some crustiness here. If you want to get this up, you can. You just sort of, with your palette knife, scrape it up. I can come in with a razor too and scrape all of this off if I want to. There's a part of me that I kind of like that I've built up these little piles. It just shows this is used, and it doesn't bother me. And I'll kind of clean up my colors. And normally I did this sort of in reverse order. Normally I'll mix this all in with my leftovers. So any part of the paint that's dirty, I'm also going to check my paints if they've been on my palette for a while and just make sure they're not getting a skin over them, which those I've been painting, so those are all good. This one is this one is completely dry except on the inside. So I'm going to grab the skin off of it, and then I can use what's left. Well, I've made a big mess of it now because I stuck it in my burnt sienna. So I'll pull the skin off, and then I can still use the paint that's underneath. So I'll do that. I don't use red very often, which is why it's... and same thing with my blue. Just gonna make sure I clean up where I pulled from. This one's dried, so I'm gonna pull this off. Okay, and then all of this I am putting in a Ziploc bag that I'm gonna fill with water before I dispose of it. And filling with water, it's just a safeguard against spontaneous combustion, which is really, really rare, but it can happen with oil rags that are condensed into a tight spot or a place where it's not getting air. I don't know. So anyway, that's what I do, just so I don't blow up my house. Okay, and then I'm wiping away all the excess paint. Got this a little bit. Okay, just getting any extra off of my palette. Making sure my knife is wiped off. And what I can do now is I'll use my solvents and I'll dip my paper towel in there and just wipe off any excess paint. When I'm in a hurry, I'll just wipe it off with a paper towel. When I want to clean it, I'll do this. And then I'll take a fresh piece of paper towel and I'll dip it in linseed oil. And just oil the board. And over time, what I love is these wooden boards, even if you buy ones just from a craft store or something, they just start to develop this really beautiful patina, just this age to them. So there you go. That's how I clean it up. And then I also, before I wash my brushes, I make sure that I wipe out all of the extra paint. You don't want a ton of, you know, you're gonna have a little bit of paint going down your drain, but you want as little as possible. So I wipe off as much as I can before I take it over to the sink to wash it out. And then I use Murphy's oil soap, or I also use the French olive oil soap. Is it called Savon de Marseille, something like that? I'll use that soap also, and I'll also use Miss Mustard Seeds Milk Paint, the brush soap. I'll use that to condition my brushes. So that's what I'll do. Then I'll fill this with water. I've used 4 brushes. I've wiped down the other ones, so I'll go clean these out, and I'm all done. So thanks a lot, everybody, for joining me, and you can always find me on my blog at missmustardseed.com, or you can shoot me an email, marian@missmustardseed.com, and I look forward to seeing all of your cows. So you can't quite get under, there we go. There we go. So bye, thanks for joining me, and take care, everybody.